All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen out there in YouTube land. I am deleted scenes human being American in YouTube, Ronan. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's episode of Unscripted. Already in the chat, Faithful Blue Wrench, channel member, the Bird Woman of YouTube. Watch out for her channel, Fluff Chick Productions. Honey Clary, channel member, JPRPH1. A member for 17 months. I want to say hello to everyone currently joining us on X and the Green Machine, also known as Rumble. I can't see you, but I know that you're there. All right. I want to preface this by reminding everyone that even though I talk about subjects that are in the news, that this is not a news program. This is an opinion show. Everyone is not always going to agree. And I understand that. Every country has a right to defend its borders. Every citizen of those countries deserve to live free within those borders. Unfortunately, everywhere, it's not always the case. And sometimes wars start to clear that up. And sometimes this keeps on happening until someone steps up and says no more. I don't delude myself. I understand that it's not a black or white world. That as much as I may hate it, it is shades of gray. I'm someone who just wants to live their life, be left alone. I'm not bothering anybody. Do me the same courtesy, and we'll get along fine. That's how I live. Not everybody's going to like that, but I'm not worried about impressing people who are going to be that way. There's always going to be somebody out there who is just going to make life difficult. And usually it is because those people are themselves in their own life miserable, and they're not happy unless they drag everybody down to their level. I'm not perfect. I have bad days. But I do my best not to drag people down when I am that way. I choose to, I just close myself off and stay to myself until I'm over it, whatever it is. Now, like I said, there are people who tend to do the opposite. And these are people who are not happy unless everyone around them is just as miserable as they are. And sometimes those people are in places of authority. And there are people who see that there are problems and don't do anything about them because they feel that either they are in the right or that it is going to leave a little more green in their wallet, let's say. You are smart people. I don't have to tell you who those people are. You can identify them for yourself. Now, there are people who have decided for whatever reason their own misery, what they choose to call guilt, which they need to get over, or there are people who just want to make money and don't care. They just care about their own power. And they have these ideas in their heads, and they get into places of authority. They're in their own bubble, and they're not in the real world anymore. And they believe what they see on MSNBC or TikTok, something like that. And they are surrounded by yes men who are filling their heads up full of muck. Now, there are some cases where that is true. And there are also cases where there are people who have just chosen to be downright ignorant because they feel they somehow owe some other group of people some kind of apology or fealty, and they need to get past that. We were going down that road in this country. But luckily for us, we had an election. And while the man that we elected by a majority margin. A man who is not perfect, who screws up, will probably screw up again. And if he does, I will talk about it on this program. Because we must, and I am saying this to everyone who is a citizen of every country, you must hold your leaders responsible. They made the choice. I can run this country, and I can do their idea of the right thing for the country and the people in it. So you have to hold your leaders, you have to hold their feet to the fire. And when they're wrong, you have to say so. And there are ways to do that without insulting their supporters. We have a problem with that in this country. We have a certain group of people who will believe anything that they are told by Rachel Maddow or The View. And that's unfortunate. And we have a lot of mentally ill people in this country. And that mental illness is celebrated by certain people who are in places of authority. It is also Hollywood that chooses to allow this to continue for whatever their reasons are. Now you get this situation like what happened this week in Minnesota. What happens when mentally ill people are allowed to these are people that need help. They don't need surgeries to mutilate their bodies. They need help. It's called gender dysphoria. It is a mental issue. And there are people that you can talk to about it. There are, and far be it from me to say, hey, we all got to go and run to a shrink, but sometimes it's necessary. There are people in this country who are mentally ill and they need help. And they are being told that they are under threat and they are now acting out. And you get the situation like we had in Minnesota. And this is going to continue to happen as long as this mental illness that is affecting this country is allowed to continue. For as long as these people continue to be radicalized and are being led down the wrong path to mutilate their own bodies, to lash out at people who are not their enemies, but they are being told that they are. And very sadly, it's going to continue until something is done about it. And hopefully, we have a leadership in place now that is willing to do what needs to be done to stop the bleeding. It's a cancer, and the cancer needs to be cut out. But there are other forms of that particular brand of cancer. And it has affected other countries, in particular in Europe. Now, I grew up in a time where a child could go outside after dark. You could leave the doors of your home unlocked. You could walk down your block or play in your yard or go to a park and be able to do that without being accosted. I came from a generation where we played around polluted ditches, chucked lawn darts past each other's heads, and tried our best not to swallow weebles. We were tough. We survived. For the most part. But we survived. But it's different now in certain places. When I was a kid, it used to be, hey, don't go into that apartment complex. Why not? Because there's a guy in there who has brass knuckles. That was the worst you ever had to worry about. Maybe there was a guy who had brass knuckles. And maybe there wasn't even a guy in there who had brass knuckles. But the point was that you knew that everybody you ran into wasn't always necessarily going to be friendly. Now, when you bring people into a country, when you do it legally, and hello to D. Penzac. Now, I have assisted in bringing someone into this country. Uh, he did it legally. He filled out all the paperwork, waited a couple of years, got all of his references and witness statements, did everything right. And now he is in this country. All his papers are legit. He has his own business. And he's a helpful member of society. And I respect everyone who does that, who does it legally. And yes, it takes a lot of time, and you have to jump through a lot of hoops, and you're going to get vetted. And yeah, I agree, dude, it takes too long, but it is what it is. Because you do have to be careful who you bring in. I always looked at it this way. If I was ever to immigrate to another country, I would do it legally. I wouldn't cross the border illegally. I'm not going to do anything illegal. I am going to follow the laws of that country. I am going to make an effort to learn a language. I'm going to get the best job I can so I am not living off the government dole. I'm not living off of taxpayers. Now, I would do that. And I expect that from anyone who enters this country. At least do that. Because if I ever immigrated into another country, I would expect the citizens of that country to expect at least that much from me. But there are people who choose not to do that. And it's not just a problem in this country, it is also a problem in other countries, countries across Europe, where you have people coming in from other countries, mostly the Middle East, who choose not to assimilate into the culture of the country that they are entering. What you do in Pakistan or Iraq isn't necessarily going to fly in other countries like America or like the UK. And some of the things that we do over here, sure as shit ain't going to fly over there. Go to Saudi Arabia and start going, my pronouns, and see how long you last. The reverse is also true. Sharia law is not going to fly in other countries. Abuse of women and children should not be allowed anywhere. Let me say that again. Abuse of women and children should not be allowed anywhere. As far as I am concerned, if you can prove some kind of assault or other things that YouTube is not going to allow me to say, I believe that should be a death penalty offense. If you are going to abuse or otherwise do harm to especially a child, I don't care what color you are, I do not care where you are from, you should be on death row. And again, this is my opinion. Maybe everybody is not going to agree. Maybe there are people who think that's too much or that's not enough. Now, places like the UK and like Scotland, where we're mostly going to be talking about tonight, they have an issue right now with they have an issue with these roaming gangs that are running around that are abusing, in particular, women and very young girls. I learned a term. They have a term for it. They have a term for it that I learned this week. They call it kid bashing. These people who follow young girls around, accosting them in parks, and doing even worse things to them. Now, I'm pausing because I got to be careful what I say about some of this stuff, and I get it. But whenever a woman or a child is in a situation like that, and they are able to defend themselves in whatever way that they can do it. If you're in a situation like that, you have to do what you have to do. And it ain't going to be all prettified up for the press or for the politicians. And prettified is not a word, but you get what I mean. Now, you get the video that we got out of Scotland that we have all seen. And there have been separate stories from both sides. And hello to Gorilla's Random Thoughts. Now, there have been two sides to this story, and there are two sides to every story, guys. Remember that. And somewhere within those two stories is where the truth lies. Now, did these girls provoke this guy? Maybe. We also have a third girl who's on a part of the video that has not been shown, who said that she was assaulted, that she was struck by this guy before he moved on to the other two girls. And hello to Moira Kitty. Now, I am not here to say who is right and who is wrong. Based on what I have heard and based on what I am seeing off of the part of the video that has been shown, I can put together a scenario in my mind. Now, I have also heard another YouTuber who is from that part of the world who says that many children are armed in such a fashion and that they have no problem slicing and dicing each other up. Now, that's also a problem if that's true. And this guy had no reason to lie. I don't think he was trying to do it to get clicks. I think he was just trying to explain what he saw. Now, this guy should not have been messing around with these underage girls. If it's true that they were provoking this guy first, then they shouldn't have been doing that. I'm not even talking about that right now. What I am talking about at the moment is the fact that this girl at 14 years of age felt it necessary to be armed in such a manner to begin with. I am talking about things being so awful within a country that these children feel that they have no choice but to be armed to go outside of their homes, to get to school, to walk down the block, to just go across the street and play in a park unmolested. That's what broke me when I saw that video. These are things a child should not have to worry about. And it's not a perfect world. There's evil out there. There are evil people who prey on children. And I've already explained what I think should happen to people like that. So, to the leaders of this country, of these countries, of the UK, of Scotland, and other countries where things like this are going on, be careful who you bring into your country. Because if your citizens have to deal with a criminal element and they feel that they are not being protected by you, their leadership, or by their police, those people will come together and they will deal with the problem in any way that they see fit. And if a 14-year-old girl feels that she or a member of her family or one of her friends may lose their life, and they get the idea in their head, hey, to get out of this, I got to cut a bitch. Then I, for one, will say, do what you have to do. Defend yourself in any way that you possibly can. Because there are people being led into your country by your politicians. These people are not, as your government says, biologists and doctors and lawyers who are going to vibrantly enrich your country. No, maybe they are, maybe there's some that are. And I'm not saying it's everybody. Understand that. I am not saying that it is everybody. But there are people who have made it very clear that they are going to come to these countries and they are not going to escape. They're going to act however they did back in their country. And this is the thing that's going to happen. Take this as a warning. And if you're not going to listen to me, at least listen to your citizens. Because they're raising the flags. And I think they're doing the right thing. Defend your citizens, or they're going to defend themselves. You're so busy arresting these people for trying to defend themselves, for going on Twitter or Facebook and saying that there is a problem that needs to be fixed. Hey, I don't want my daughter to get assaulted. You're going to throw that parent into jail for hate speech? You're going to throw a parent into prison for being a parent? No. No, I say. I don't want to ignore the chat. Hello to True Rock Creations. Haters gonna hate, can't do anything about it. Yeah, sadly, no. Hello to you, Sarn G. Always good to see you in the chat, sir. Host of Films with Friends, the creator of the 10-Word Review, Big Al Presents. Always good to see you, sir. I'm going to be joining Al Friday night. No, Saturday night for the Saturday edition of Films with Friends. Hello to Emoji Queen, Lady Mist. Hello to Aged Boomer, my co-host on Live from Sparkwood 21. Host of Geeky Geezers, which is going to start at the top of the hour. If you stay to the end of this broadcast, you will be automatically redirected over to his channel for his show. Myra says you have a Scottish girl up there. Why do you have England's flag behind her instead of Scotland's flag? Because that was a screw up. And we went with what we had. Yeah. And I didn't feel like changing it. So, worked on death row. Simply just any abuse of a child is rather low standard to be on death row. It's extraordinarily expensive to house death row inmates because the endless appeals. Yeah, well, maybe these endless appeals is something that needs to stop. Problem is, some of them are baiting a reaction out of the guys so they can film the reaction to it, claim their attack. Problem is, which one is this? Is it real or is which one's provoked? Well, we'll find out. And if this is investigated further, and if it's decided one person or the other is in the wrong, I'll talk about that too. If girls are trying to provoke him, he could have simply called the police. Their laws favor immigrants over Scottish citizens anyway. Yeah, sadly it does. You can hear him smirking and chuckling at the girls as he antagonizes them. Yeah, you actually can. And that's part of what I'm talking about here. Because all right, let's say for example, I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just saying this is an example. If these girls provoked this guy, he didn't do anything to set the situation down. Is he from an Islamic country? Yes. It's applied to the immigrated from somewhere. News is not going to say where. No. No, the news is not going to say where because that's the thing that you have to understand about about the mainstream news media is the mainstream news media is partisan, and they have an agenda. And anything that goes against that agenda, they're not going to report it, or they're going to falsely report it. That's why you have to go to alternate news sites. Hello to the Horror King. Always good to see you, sir. Yusanji says, lived in an Islamic country as a teen. Gave it the idea that girls and women should not even talk to a man that they don't know, except to just talk business. Okay. So you think that's bad in the UK? People can and have been sent to jail for posting memes on social media. Yeah. Yeah, it's part of what I'm talking about. That they're so busy throwing people into jail over memes that they're missing more horrific things that are going on. Well, at least admit to it when he's wrong or made a mistake, which is more than I could say about the Irish government. Yeah. Yeah, look, folks, if it turns out I'm wrong about something, I'm going to say so on this broadcast, and I've done so before. I probably will again. And when we get to the bottom of this particular situation, if anything I've said here tonight was wrong, I'll say so. I'll come back and I'll say so. I always told you I would be honest with you. I'm not always going to be right. I know that. But I will be honest. And if I fuck up, I'll say so. You deserve to be told the truth for once. Moira censored kitty. Yeah. I kind of like that, actually. Yeah. Or the mainstream media in general. Yeah. Wrong situation, limit freedom of speech. We're living at a time where people say what's bad is good and what's good is bad. Yeah. If I go to the UK, I know I'll be arrested for my social media. Yeah, if I were in the UK doing this show right now, I would expect constables to be at my door already. All right. All right. Well, sadly, we're not going to fix it tonight, folks. I'm just putting my opinion out there. And that's all that this show is. I said at the beginning, the disclaimer, this is an opinion show. That's all it is. It's my opinion. And I'm not saying that you're always going to agree or that I'm always necessarily going to be in the right, but it's just my opinion. We have to protect the children. This may sound sappy as hell, but they are our future. They are our future leaders. They're going to take us into the future. They're going to take us into the next level. And they're going to be taking care of us. We have to leave for them a world that is better than the way that we found it. Do not allow our children to live in fear. Because it's not right and it's not fair. I want to thank everyone who is following along tonight on X in the green scene, also known as Rumble. I can't see you, but I know that you're there. I want to thank everyone in the chat tonight. Boomer, Al, Moira, Gorilla's Random Thoughts, Connie, Horror King, Usarn G, JPRPH1, Emoji Queen, Lady Mist, Bird Woman of YouTube, Connie Cleary, friend of the channel, Deep Hemzak, Tree Rock Creations, thank you, JP, once again for the member chat. From HQ, in all points, north, south, east, west, and beyond, good night. Take care. Stay strong. Be safe and healthy, because this is how we roll.